Alright, so many of you have probably heard or at least seen the quote, "The mountains are calling, and I must go." But I doubt that many of you actually know the origin of that quote. My name is John Muir. For those of you who might not know, I was a naturalist, an environmentalist, an author, an advocate for wilderness preservation, but above all, a human being on this earth. When I would write my return address, I used to write John Muir, comma, Earth Planet, comma, Universe, as the return address. I emphasized this last point in my life, and I learned that mankind is not the center of the universe or the natural world, but rather a part of it. I lived this throughout my life, but starting at a young age. I was born on April 21st, 1838 in Dunbar, Scotland. When I was 11, my father packed up my family and moved us to Wisconsin, of all places, in the name of God. My father was a very religious man and would have chased his church to the ends of the earth if he had to. So, after being in America for a few years, I almost died. My family needed a well, and my father gave me the task of digging it. He was too busy preaching to help out, so I had to dig the well alone. He was also too cheap to buy dynamite, so I dug it by hand using only a chisel. I spent months on end in this well, just digging all day. At the end of every day, my father would lower a bucket into the well, I'd climb in, and he'd haul me out. One particular day, just like any other, he lowered the bucket and hauled it out empty. Like the neighbors had predicted, I was unconscious at the bottom of the well, suffering from a condition called choke damp, which is when you breathe in too much carbon dioxide. So, eventually they got me out of the well, but I was never able to forgive my father for almost killing me. In 1867, after years of walking around northern America, attending the University of Wisconsin, showing off some of my inventions, and filling notebooks with botanical discoveries, I came back to the U.S. I had spent the last couple of years in Canada, because the U.S. Civil War had just started, and I didn't want to fight in it. I didn't really identify as an American, so I didn't really care what was going on. So I came back to the U.S. in 1867 to work in a carriage factory in Indiana. One day I was working in the dark, dusty carriage factory, and I got a metal filing in my eye. It caused me to go blind almost instantly, and then within a couple of hours, my other eye went blind too. So, as you can imagine, I was pretty devastated. Everything I loved was nature, and I took it in by seeing it, and suddenly I couldn't do that anymore. So I spent months in a dark room, just imagining the places I'd read about, thinking that I'd never get to see them. Miraculously, I recovered my vision fully. I took it that the universe was telling me to get away from the machines and the life I hated, and do more of what I truly enjoyed, which was exploring. So I told my friends and family that I was going to the Gulf. They pointed me in the direction of the train station and suggested transfers I should take, but I sort of laughed and said, I'm not going to take the train to the Gulf. I was going to walk. So, after several months, I walked from Indiana to the Gulf of Mexico along the Mississippi River, which was about 1,000 miles, more or less. So, after I got to the Gulf, I spent some time sailing around the Caribbean, and eventually when I came back to the States, I decided I wanted to go to San Francisco. I'd heard rave reviews about San Francisco. At the time, this was the place to be, that's where everyone wanted to go. So I showed up in San Francisco, I looked around, I went into a store, and I asked the clerk where the nearest wild place was. I never liked the city, I still don't. So that spring, I saw Yosemite for the first time, and I was awestruck. I decided to settle down there for a little while and work as a shepherd in the Sierras. In my free time, I hiked, climbed, and studied around the Sierras. This time would serve as inspiration for my first novel, My First Summer in the Sierra. I once said that of all the mountain ranges I've climbed, I like the Sierra Nevada the best. So, about 10 years later, my nomadic lifestyle changed dramatically because I got married and my wife wanted me to settle down and stop basically going everywhere. I was traveling from Alaska up and down the coast for years, and I needed to finally settle down. So now, when I was sitting at home, I had time to write. The rest of my life had been used creating adventures, and now I finally had time to record them. At this point in my life, I also started to urge conservation, especially of the Yosemite area. So, about 10 years later, on October 1st, 1890, Yosemite becomes a national park, and I was ecstatic. However, not all of Yosemite became a national park. I would spend the next 17 years working with my conservation conservation organization, the Sierra Club, to ensure that all of Yosemite was included in Yosemite National Park, which would include the valley itself and Mariposa Grove. This is considered one of my greatest successes in the name of conservation. My greatest failure in the name of conservation would kick off right after the 1906 earthquake that destroyed San Francisco. See, the city planners needed to look for new sources of water and energy to help rebuild their city. They looked promptly to Hetch Hetchy Valley, which was a beautiful, picturesque miniature Yosemite just south of the Yosemite Valley. I was disgusted. I didn't know why anyone would even consider flooding this valley and turning it into a reservoir. Like, it was too beautiful to waste. So I got together with the Sierra Club, and we appeared before numerous boards and committees trying to save Hetch Hetchy. Unfortunately, 7 years later, the battle for Hetch Hetchy was lost, and they built the dam. Ancient trees were chopped, granite was blasted, and Native American homes and burial grounds were covered. I was devastated. I said that no holier temple has ever been consecrated by the heart of man. The next year, on Christmas Eve, I died in a hospital in Los Angeles. The doctors would rule my cause of death as pneumonia, but honestly, I died of heartbreak. My legacy lives on today through a variety of things named after me, and as well as a strongly established national park system. Some modern day critics of mine stated that my legacy has become outdated, irrelevant, or even rooted in economic privilege. But I guarantee that the wilderness isn't and never has been an exclusive luxury. It's also been proposed that it's okay to completely exploit the Earth's resources in our favor. But people don't realize that when we lose a part of the natural world, we also lose a part of ourselves. Most people are ignorant to this. Most people are simply on the Earth, not in it, have no conscious sympathy or relationship with the world about them. Most people let life sit by without an ounce of appreciation for the natural world, but with loads of entitlement to it. Don't be like most people. I urge you to walk quietly in any direction and taste the freedom of the mountaineer. Climb the mountains and get their good tidings. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees, and your cares will drip away one by one. As age comes on, one source of enjoyment after another comes to a close, but I can guarantee that nature's sources never will. Thank you.
So, are you like the model for Johnny Appleseed? Do you know who Johnny Appleseed is?
Yeah, he's the
guy who would
Appleseed.
walk around and plant seeds so that more trees would grow. There you go. You were really good friends and which president? Right on. Okay, let's see.
Is that yours?
I'm looking right.